Welcome to the Ultimate Gamer Podcast, a show that features conversations with the trailblazers, thought leaders, decision makers, and investors who are defining the gaming and esports space. On the Ultimate Gamer Podcast, we take a journey into this dynamic industry and start to decode and reveal who and what's making news. It's about connecting, and it's about sharing the stories and vision of the people who make gaming and esports a global phenomenon. And now, please welcome your host, student of the game and connector to the esports community, Tommy Knapp.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tommy Knapp, and this is an all-new episode of the All About the Game podcast presented by the Ultimate Gamer. On today's show, I have a conversation with Ryan McNeil, CEO and founder of Sports ID, a sports tech company that tracks the sports and esports universe one profile at a time. He is changing the way data-driven sports technology helps parents, athletes, and coaches make decisions and communicate about taking their talent to the next level. As an All-American cornerback and national champion at the University of Miami, Ryan started our conversation with a few stories about hard work, preparation, and timing that he learned as a Hurricane and can also be applied directly to business. By the way, he has also played for more than 10 years and was an All-Pro in the National Football League. Ryan then talked about being comfortable with being uncomfortable as an entrepreneur. It's not for everyone, and that's fine. Everyone can't be an entrepreneur. Everyone isn't wired to be an entrepreneur. He continued to move the ball down the field by sharing his thoughts about esports and learning from traditional sports, and closed the game out talking about the speed of innovation and serious fun. This man is wise. Please join me now for my conversation with Ryan McNeil.
What's going on, man? Long time no see.
I know, right? How are you?
I can't complain, man. Grinding.
Dude, look at that. You got the Yeti. Is that the Yeti? Look at I got my beast here too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you got to stay hydrated. That's the name of the game.
Yes, sir.
You got to stay hydrated, especially being in one spot for a long period of time.
So are you sitting there because you said you just got off another podcast?
No, I checked in early. I think
gotcha.
You guys were still on yours.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Nah, we probably going to launch some podcasts later on this summer too.
Nice.
Kind of, create some content, something different take on youth sports space.
Yeah, and I want to get into that. I mean, last time we saw each other, or the first time we ever met actually, was DreamHack Atlanta, and I just kind of wanted to get a little bit of your take on that event. Was that the first time you'd ever been to a DreamHack?
I think it was. Honestly, I think it was. Yeah, I thought it was cool. Interesting. And you can see the energy. I think that, just like anything new and young, if you execute well, you'll grow. And looks like so far the esports space has done a really good job of, trial and error. Nothing's perfect, but I think they've done a good job of laying the foundation and following the recipe of what works. Right. And the things that hadn't worked, I thought they did a pretty good job of that.
Yeah. It's a massive event. Obviously they're right now they're on hiatus.
Well, yeah, everybody is, right?
Right.
But they're still doing tournaments. And I think that's the thing they have as an advantage over traditional sports. And I don't know if we talk about that, but I thought they did a good job of kind of pushing out tournaments, pushing out content, and to keep the audience engaged, to keep the industry engaged in some form of fashion, right? Because otherwise, you have to wait like everybody else.
Yeah, it wasn't that big a stretch. From a lot of the people that I talked to, the pivot was a pivot back to kind of the old times. Before There were events, most of it was digital and online. Certainly not to the size and scope that it is now, but that was the thing. So cool. So DreamHack, that's the event we saw each other at, and then I know we've talked a number of times since then about some Super Bowl related activity, and I want to get into that, some of the stuff that you've done around the Super Bowl in Atlanta, and if you did something down here in South Florida. But one of the ways I always like to start, and I'm sure you've been on enough of these where you've kind of gone through the let's go back to your origin story and start a little bit about who Ryan McNeil is and how you got involved in football. But it'll be a little bit different this time, because when you tell that story, I'd like you to weave in any gaming that you did as a kid. Like, did you play Atari? Did you, what was your history in the gaming space?
Well, that's gonna be short, but I give you a few little chuckles here and there.
All right, cool, yeah. So if we could do that, that'd be great.
Cool. Let me know when you're ready.
Do
you do your own production, or you got
no? So after we're done, I do show notes, I do intros and wrap ups, so that we don't, I don't want to take up the time with that.
Right.
And then it goes over to post, and all the editing is done there, and then it'll be released probably a couple weeks from today.
Yeah, let me know, man. It's kind of cool because if you got a system in place, I love to mimic that and not have to reinvent the wheel because, it's not every day you do a podcast.
Yeah,
and,
well,
I take a look at the stuff you sent over before,
right?
But I was meaning to study it before I got on today.
No worries. Most of that is for me. I send that over to every single guest I have, but a lot of it's just for me, so that I have a better feel for every single guest that comes on, because I'm doing a lot of these, right? So I just want to be prepared.
How many do you do per week? Like three a week?
Well, we started like 4 or 5 weeks ago, and I wanted to get a bunch of them in the can because what we'd like to do is release Monday through Friday, one a day.
Oh, wow.
So I did 40. I've done 40 like in 4 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
And then this past weekend, we did the first live ones we've done, because we had an event down here in Miami called the Ultimate Gamer. It was a completely controlled environment. We didn't have a lot of people at it. Everything was sterile. We did the temperature check when you went through the door. Everybody was wearing masks. So, it was very, very much underneath the CDC guidelines, everything. But it was the first time. It was kind of crazy, right? Because I did 30 of these in like 3 weeks, and then I did 10 to 12 of them in person. And I prefer in person. But then when you start doing them like this online, you kind of get used to this format.
And it's convenient, and like you said, you can control it probably a little bit better. And instead of somebody driving in, you're meeting somebody, you can, hey, you got hour and a half, carve out. I was like, yeah, let's do it. Yeah. And it just makes it easy.
Well, that's why I think I was able to. I have a pretty strong network from my traditional, being a college athlete and then over a decade in traditional sports. So I had a lot of people that I could reach out to, and on the esports and gaming side, almost 5 years now. So I have a pretty strong network. So exactly like you said, if I asked you to come down to Miami for this, it'd be pretty challenging and much more difficult. But I've spoken to people from Malaysia, from Sweden, it's just a matter of timing it up at the right time. But you can talk to a lot more people when you do it virtually instead of in person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, man. So,
cool, man.
So whether it's when you were 4 years old or 10 years old or 12, whenever you got the first football in your hand and started running around playing Pee-wee like I did, and I know we're both D-backs, you had a little bit more stellar career, but I have a national championship under my belt too. So, I can throw
That's
a
good
ring
stuff.
out. Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, man. But Ithaca College D3, but I see we were a powerhouse of Division III. So it was pretty good football. I had a guy on, Herb May, the other day, and Herb played some football, and he talked about I can't remember exactly how he termed it, but he's like, if I wanted to go the not the poor man's route, but play D3 football, I was like, wait a second, bro, man, I played D3. Right? Hold on.
Nah, I'm a firm believer in I know how hard it is, right? Let me adjust this light for a second.
Yeah, for sure, no problem.
I know how hard it is. And is that too much light?
No, you look good.
I know how hard it is, and I know those guys work just as hard as we would do over at Miami and whatnot. So yeah, I don't, and sometimes more, right? Because the coaches always tell you, if you want to get to the next level, you got to do twice as much as the other guys. The other guys are they having training tables and this and this and that, and you guys will have that. So you got to work hard. So, I've heard it all. And there's no loss of appreciation on my side for D2, D3, and what have you.
Yeah, I mean, I think
that's almost too much light.
It's just like anything, right? Like when you look at it, anytime you can say, and I don't care if it's like, 10 of us playing one-on-one basketball out in the driveway. If you're the guy that comes out on top out of those 10, then you're the guy on top. Well, in D3 football, I think at that time there might have been 128 schools playing college football, and we were the best in the country at that time, right? So nobody, and the thing that's great about that is that nobody can ever take that away from you. You can always say
ever. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So great experience. And, I was a football player growing up, and I don't know, like, I want to hear your story, because I played some games when I was growing up, but when I first got into this business 4 or 5 years ago, I said, well, I'm not a gamer, but I had to change that story, because when you tell that narrative out there in this community, you want to be able to speak authentically, and to speak authentically. I mean, honestly, I am a gamer. Like when I grew up, I did play Pong, way back to Pong, and then I played things like Donkey Kong and Pac-Man, Space Invaders, and Asteroids. I played all those. When I stopped playing was probably when all my buddies at college were playing Madden, and I was like, I can't play Madden, because if I play it, I'm gonna lose. I'm not even gonna go to class.
Right.
That was my thing. I was just afraid I was going to just play Madden during the day and then play football, IRL, in real life, the rest of the time. So I stayed away from it, and then I didn't get back into it until like 3 or 4 years ago, and it's mostly because of my kids now. But but that's my story, bro. I want to hear your story.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
So let me know how you want to get started.
Yeah, man, we're going. We've been going.
Okay.
From the beginning. Yeah. So
I didn't know that. Yeah, so you want me to start like my story?
Yeah. Just from balling from back in the day, and then just kind of, and if you can, if there isn't any weaving of any gaming into it, go ahead and do it. If there's not, there's not. That's fine too.
Let's see. You got an editor, so y'all can edit out all the other stuff, because I had no idea we were still going.
Yeah.
But, so I've been involved in the sports space for probably over 4 decades now, as a consultant, advisor, executive, and entrepreneur, but mainly as an athlete, right? So played sports as a kid, all the youth sports, mainly football, basketball, swimming.
And Ryan, where'd you grow up? I can't remember. Where'd you grow up?
I'm from Fort Pierce, Florida.
Okay, Fort Pierce.
Fort Pierce, Florida. And in high school, played your big sports, football, basketball, track and field. And a little known fact, I played tennis in high school.
All right.
And this is because I think I got like a C- in English, and my mom would let me play basketball. So she know how bad I want to play basketball. She said, "You can play anything else, but you're not playing basketball." And I was like, please, please, please. She wasn't having it. So to be defiant and to be different, I guess, and to revolt, I played tennis. And actually, I was pretty good.
Right.
So I was the 4th seed on our tennis team. We had a really good tennis team.
Right.
And then obviously I was good enough to get offered a scholarship at University of Miami. And so in 88, that's when I got on campus, and being there, you were among, alpha among alphas. And that experience has kind of helped shape and mold me, in the sense that was able to play early. I played my freshman year, started my freshman year, and started ever since. And
can you tell me, how did you do that? Did you just walk in and it just happened to be a vacancy or void there? Or did a guy in front of you get hurt?
No,
for me, I had something similar where I had a guy on the other side got hurt. They moved the guy that was in front of me over there. Then I started. And then when the other guy came back, the other guy ended up going second string. And I started for my next 3 years.
I was a little bit more different. So most of my class, we redshirted. So I think it was only 2 out of 20 that got played. And so, it's University of Miami. And so, they just won the national title, right? So they could just beat Oklahoma the year before in 87.
Was that Bosworth days? Did they beat up on Bosworth, Brian Bosworth?
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah.
So, being recruited by Miami is great. It's not that far from home, less than 2 hours, hour and a half from home. So it's perfect for me. And, we were all sitting around, thinking about, whether or not we're going to redshirt or not. And so we got word that Coach Johnson, Jimmy Johnson, was still there at the time. Coach Johnson was bringing guys into the office and talking to them. And so you didn't want to get caught upstairs with Coach Johnson because he has a way of selling ice to Eskimo, right? And so I was up there for some reason, getting a form signed. I forget exactly what it was, getting our weekend money, our stipend or whatever. And Coach Johnson walked in. It's like, Ryan, hey, how you doing? I said, good, Coach. Come in and talk to you. And so you kind of knew what was coming. He's like, got some good news and probably some better news. The good news is, you're one of the young guys that we're thinking about playing and not redshirting this year. But let me tell you, you're probably going to be on special teams. Right. It's not going to be in a position. How do you feel about that? And I said, let me think about it, Coach. I tried to get out there without making a decision. He's like, well, we're kind of making the travel plans now. So what are your thoughts? I was like, if it's only going to be on special teams and contributing there, I think I would do a good job, but I don't want to waste a year. I don't want to use a year just on special teams. I think, focus on school, because I was a pretty good student, focus on school and hanging out with my friends on the team. That was kind of in my mindset. He was like, fair enough. That's fine. And so I think I was able to get out of there, my heart racing a million miles a minute. Right. And that was that. I told everybody, it was like, what? He let you get away and not ask you to play. Yeah, to play. And I was like, no, it's like, he and I had a really good relationship, even from the beginning when you started recruiting me, when he came to the house and whatnot. So we had a really, really good relationship. But I came in as a receiver. And I was probably a better receiver than I was defensive back. I played receiver and safety in high school. Mm-hmm. And so you asked, how did that transition happen? Well, at the University of Miami, we had a ton of receivers.
Yeah, you had some good receivers back then.
And they were good.
Yeah.
No, they were the best.
I mean, you got some Hall of Famers, no? Hall of Famers from that time, no?
No Hall of Famers. Mike had just left, so he would be the Hall of Famer. Mike had just left, but we had a lot of others that were really good coming out of high school. They were parade All-Americans and whatnot. Still hadn't played.
Right.
So it was a long line. I mean, literally, in my mind, it looked like it was an endless line of receivers over here. And the line wasn't as long on defensive backs over here.
Right.
So I was like, I think I can beat that guy out, that guy, that guy out, that guy out. And so I went in the defensive back line. And so Dave Campo, who was the defensive back coach at the time, he didn't want any trouble with Hubbard Alexander, who was our receivers coach. He was like, you sure? I was like, yeah, I'm sure. Did you talk to Coach Alexander about it? No, I ain't talked to Coach Alexander. Well, you can't be over here until you talk to Coach Alexander. So I would pretend like I talked to Coach Alexander and zoom back around. And Ryan, I thought you talked to Coach Alexander. He said that he didn't know anything about you playing DB and this and this. I was like, Coach, just give me that and see how it goes. And so because they had so many and we were so young, Coach Axe wasn't, he wasn't really worried about it. We was playing Florida State first game of the season. Right. So that had everybody focused, right?
Right.
And so kind of got away. So we was on a scout team, starting safety on scout team. And we were wrecking shot. I think Steve Walsh was our quarterback. We were wrecking shot. We was putting on them. And Coach Gary Stevens, the offensive coordinator, we had him MFing, yelling, screaming because we were taking it to our number one offense. And I remember, I forgot who got hurt. I think Herb James got hurt in practice. This is probably like right before the season, maybe 2 weeks before the season. Herb got hurt in practice.
Right.
And he was the scout team corner.
Uh-huh.
And so Coach Johnson happened to be on our side watching practice. He was like, Ryan, go over there at corner for the rest of the day, and brought somebody else in for safety. And so when I tell you that I put it on those receivers, and so you can hear the coaches over there, whispering. So after practice, Coach Campo had a funny wry smile on his face, and he said, "Ryan, come here, I want to talk to you." I said, "Yeah, Coach, what's up?" And he said, "Me and Coach Johnson want to talk to you about something." I was like, "Okay, did I do something wrong?" It was like, you're a freshman.
Isn't that funny? Where your mind immediately
goes, it's like what did I do?
Right.
So they came. Well, we walked over to Coach Johnson. He was doing a media session. The reporters was around him, so we waited till he was finished. And he's like, "Ryan," I was like, "Yes, Coach." He said, "You did a really good job out there today." I was like, "Thanks, Coach." I was like, "Phew." He said, I think you just found your position." I said, "Okay." And so from that day forward, I was a corner, and the rest is history.
Yeah, man. There's something.
So just as big, just as fast as those other guys. And long arms. When you're 6'3", that was the dawn of the bigger corner, right? And having to go against all that talent on offense every day just made me better, and I made those guys better. So out of 5 years at University of Miami, only lost 5 games. So we had 2 number ones, 2 number twos, 1 number 3, 2-time All-American, junior, senior year. So, I can't complain. It was, that experience was, again, one that shaped me. And it was interesting from beginning to end, and I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change it for the world. Obviously, we had Dennis Erickson come in the next year. Coach Erickson was great for us in the sense that he brought a new offense to the table, but he was smart enough not to touch the defense. We're just too good, and we had beast on the defensive side of the ball, and the defense really was what carried our team all the years I was there.
Yeah, there's something to be said for when you come from a wide receiver's mentality and then you go and play D-back, because a lot of D-backs maybe don't start out as a wide receiver. So when you're in the head of the wide receiver because you've been there, so you kind of know what they're going to do. You know what I mean? A lot of times, down and distance, you understand.
You know what they're supposed to do,
right?
You know what they're supposed to do. Don't necessarily know all the time what they're going to do. You know what they're supposed to do. Right. And what I should tell everybody is like the game of cat and mouse is not with the receivers, with the quarterback. And so I studied the quarterbacks more than I did the receivers. If you wasn't a receiver that I felt, warrant my attention, you were just a number,
right?
Number 81, number 80, number 85, whatever, my fight and the matchup to me was always against the quarterback. He had the ball in his hands 100% of the time. And, he kind of dictated the flow. And if I can stop him, if I can confuse him, the receiver a lot of times was irrelevant. And that's kind of how I approached the game. It was more mental, more of a chess match than anything else. Yeah.
Yeah. So how does it, because that's awesome. I'd never even really thought about it that way. It's great that you said that, because after I played college football, and it almost sounds silly when I say it, but I played like 13 or 14 years of flag football, and I played quarterback.
Right.
And I, as a quarterback, was always trying to dictate to the defensive backs, because I played defensive back, where I was going to throw the ball and throw
Right.
them off that way. You know, not just
Right.
looking off, but the way you handled the ball as a quarterback and just the way you moved. And so it's interesting to hear you say that as a D-back, knowing that, okay, here's my receiver, and knowing kind of down a distance and what they're going to do, and knowing this guy's, 5'7" and he's super fast and he's quick, and that's the kind of receiver he is. And this guy's 6'5" and, can jump over my head. So I know what they're going to do, but I really need to focus in and work on learning what the quarterback is all about. And how does that apply then as you roll over into business?
It's the same way, right? So you still have to study. You still have to look at trends, tendencies, as we call them. So, market analysis is the trends, right? It's the tendencies of your audience, of your customers. What do they do? What do they like? And it changes from time to time. And I think you can carry the same processes, procedures over to business as you would in sports. Practice makes perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect.
Yeah.
That doesn't change. The hard work you still have to do. There are rare occasions when you have a great product, bad team, bad business model, right? You still succeed. Very rare you have, 1 out of 3 that works. Your chances are better when you have 2 out of the 3. You have 3 out of 3, you're rocking and rolling. You're cooking with grease.
Right.
And, that's been as an entrepreneur, it's uncertainty. You have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. I don't think people are used to that, right? And when I hear friends and family and associates talk about they want to be entrepreneurs, and I just frankly tell them, no, you're not cut out to be an entrepreneur. You don't have that dog in you. You don't have that uncertainty. If things go wrong, what are you going to do, right? You are comfortable in your career. You like, to get your check every 2 weeks. You like the benefits, and that's fine. Everybody can't be an entrepreneur. Everybody's not wired to be an entrepreneur, right? And so in business, you have to grind just like you would as an athlete. You have to lift when nobody's looking, right? You have to run when nobody's looking. You have to do the things that you have to eat right when nobody's looking. And the same thing holds true for being an entrepreneur. You got to do the things that you're supposed to do. And when you're not going to get credit for it, nobody's looking and nobody cares, right? And that you got to, as a leader, as the founder and the CEO of a company, you have to be willing to do more than what you're asking everybody else on your team to do. Right. And if you're not willing to do that, you don't need to be a leader. You don't need to be an entrepreneur. And so, Tommy, it's tough, and you have to have those hard conversations. And so, the thing that you got to find out, what's your own motivation, right? Some people are motivated by money. I want to be rich. Some people are motivated by fame. I want to be on the cover of this magazine, that magazine. And some people, want to change the world. So you got to find out what your motivation is and kind of tailor your style, I guess, around that. And then for me, having played in the NFL for 12 years, you got a little bit of all of that. And I think now it's more, how can you move the needle and make the world a better place through sports? That's my sweet spot.
Yep.
For the last, I've been involved in sports, like I said, over 4 decades. The last 10 plus years, embrace my inner geek, focus on technology, my inner nerd. And the last 5 years focused and asked myself that question: how can we make sports better? Right? What are the things we have to do to make sports better? Because sports has been good to me. It's popular. It's large, generate a lot of revenue, but it still has flaws. Right? Sports is archaic in a sense. It is fragmented. And most importantly, it's inefficient. And so talk to my mentors and my advisors, the one thing we knew we had to do if we was going to make sports better was infuse technology into it. Okay. And that kind of made us kind of narrow the focus on what some of the products and services that we can introduce to the sports space that's backed by technology. They make it better. And that's that's our North Star, really. and some of the things that we've been working on and will work on in the future.
Yeah, when you talk about that, I know I was listening to, and I do my homework like we talked about. I sent you over some of that information, but one of the things I've heard you say is that you want to come up, and I might be misquoting, but I'm sure you'll fix it if I'm wrong. But it's something like small solutions for big industries. It's something along those lines, right?
Right. So I always tell people that, at our core, we want to solve small problems for big markets, right? And so sports is a big market. It's a huge market. But even within that market, you have gaps, you have cracks, you have pains and problems that sometimes go unnoticed or unsolved. And being that we have the ability to move up and down the industry, all the way from pro sports, all the way down to youth sports and everything in between, we have relationships and we listen. Being an entrepreneur, being a good entrepreneur, you got to listen. You got to listen to your market, listen to your customers, got to listen to your audience. And we've done a really good job of listening. We just finished a international technology accelerator this past fall that was based here in Atlanta, the farm, backed by Comcast. So Comcast is an official investor in Sports ID, right? So one of the things that they harped on us, Barunda Prince, Ricky Hunter, and the rest of the staff there harped on us about customer discovery, know your customer, right? And so it's the same thing, as you well know, about playing an opponent, scouting report, know your opponent. And that's one thing that we really, really focused in on, because some things that we knew, we assumed because we've been around the space in sports for so long, we took a few things for granted. And it was so refreshing to learn something new. We didn't think we would by talking to the customer. We, ironically enough, lumped a lot of different categories in one bucket, like camps. Everybody's got the same problem in the camps. And if we have a silver bullet, we solve everybody's problems. No, that's not the case. Right. You have nonprofit camps that happen one time a year. You have camp run by Girl Friday, and all her staff are volunteers, to all the way you have 2,500 kids at a camp that this is what they do. This is their business. They run 100 camps per year, and then you have everything in between. And so we had to come up with products and services that was helpful and are helpful for the whole market, not just onesies and twosies. And that was interesting, because being on the calls and having those calls myself, you heard directly from the customer, and it was like, we don't care about the technology, right? We're a tech company. We're talking about, hey, we can make your job easier by doing this. We can help you promote your camp. You can take attendance. You can do this. You can do that. It's like, no. We don't need that, want that. We tried that and had somebody come with technology, and it made our camp twice as long, right?
Interesting.
And so I was an eye opener, and she was like, if you can help us find sponsorships, that'd be helpful for us, right? And three key areas, right, is T-shirts, food, water, and tchotchkes, some giveaways.
Sure.
And that's mainly what she was saying that she needed help with, and securing the venue and things like that, as opposed to all the fancy leaderboards and times and 40 and jumps and things like that. We want kids to have fun,
right,
and stay active. And so she distilled it down. Her need, her pain was so crystal clear to me. And I shared that with the rest of the team. It's like, hey, everybody doesn't have the same problem. Everybody doesn't have the same pain. And this is what we have to be able to do over a long period of time to address these pains and problems for someone like that camp, all the way to the big mega camp. And so it's important to be in tune with the audience and with your customers on a continuous basis.
Yeah, man, I could see where that would affect all those things you were just saying. Those three things would affect her bottom line. So if she could get, and it doesn't even need to be a cash sponsor, it needs to be an in-kind sponsor to take care of that.
Exactly.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, having said that, I mean, if you could tell me a little bit more, it sounds like you have a customizable solution now, maybe with a suite of support inside of it. And I can see, and it's, again, like you said, everybody's somewhat similar but different. So if you take this and you use it for traditional sports ID, and you work it into camps and you work it into leagues, tell us what that looks like. And I could actually see this, and I'm assuming that you've been looking at that, going to DreamHack and looking at that in the gaming and esports space. Because when I jumped from traditional sports 3 years ago, from the Marlins into esports, one of the things I saw was so many of the similarities. Are they different? Yeah, of course, there's a number of differing areas as well.
Right.
But there's a lot from the top, from franchise leagues being built out to college scholarships to, an entire pathway now of on the competitive side, to also job opportunities, career opportunities, and college opportunities lining up in gaming and esports now. And I see what you offer for traditional sports as potentially being a solution as well in the gaming and esports market from the youth on up. So tell us a little bit more about exactly how robust and comprehensive Sports ID is.
So, I was sharing with you about how Sports ID came about and the problems we're trying to solve. And we were trying to figure out, how do you deploy that, right? How do you present that? How do you present this solution? And so the closest thing we can liking Sports ID to is like LinkedIn. So think of Sports ID as LinkedIn for sports, but with data analytics built into the profiles. Our overarching goal is to be able to qualify and quantify everything and everybody in the sports ecosystem, people, places, and things. Now, we know we don't have lose your grandeur. We know this is going to be a tall task. So we do it in phases. Mm-hmm. The first phase that we focused on was youth sports, hence camps, sports camps, and sports and camp ID. So think of camp ID, Tommy, as the Yelp or Angie's List for sports camps.
Okay.
We sit in the middle of a two-sided marketplace. On one side, you have your camps, camp directors looking for campers. The other side, you have your parents of young athletes looking for camps. And so we digitally connect them through our algorithms. We do that easily and efficiently. Mm-hmm. With that model, we think the business model is the SaaS model, software as a service model. We think we can replicate that same model throughout the sports ecosystem. We can do the same thing for tournaments. We can do the same thing for teams, same thing for trainers, same thing for coaches, same thing for fans, so on and so forth, until we have everything and everybody qualified and quantified. When it comes to esports is probably really closely aligned with a lot of traditional sports. Why and how? Maybe even easier, because a lot of their information and data is already connected. All you got to do is pull it in through an API, right? And so we have this summer, we'll build out esports ID. And so that would be the foundation on the esports side. And then we'll replicate the same traditional sports side and mirror that on the esports side. So, we'll be bugging Todd Harris, Ali Young, all those here in Atlanta.
Dude, I mean, I love that you just threw out their names, because over the weekend, I gave so much love to Atlanta, because you guys are doing so much in the city of Atlanta in gaming and esports and connecting. And I don't know if I've seen a better place in the States anyway, and that people have come together as a community to kind of lift all ships.
Well, what I would give Todd, Ali, and the rest of the esports
Ryan Johnson and
Ryan, M. Cole, all of them, is that they took advantage of opportunity. Traditional sports stopped. And when traditional sports stopped, they picked it up. They picked up the pace of for esports and with esports. And, I tip my hat off to them for doing so. Yeah. But we've been talking to them for a while. We'll have Ali and a lot of her esports on our platform, even our traditional Camp ID platform. So we'll have esports there as well. Mm-hmm. But we'll create a esports version of Camp ID as well. And I think that, even though, I think you asked me early on, did I play games growing up? I didn't. One, because I was a good student, and in our family, games they weren't in high regard. I would have to go with my friends to go to the arcade or at somebody's birthday party and things like that. And I didn't play enough to become good. And so I hate losing. So I didn't want to play my friends who played all the time. They were good. And it's like, forget that. But I bought like 3 or 4 gaming systems when I first got into the NFL for when family and friends come to visit. Because, you know, obviously be at practice and be at work. And while I'm gone, they can play the games. And when I tell you, I think I played in 5 years once.
Right.
But I appreciate it. You know, I appreciate gaming and how it's evolved to what you was mentioning earlier about scholarships. You know, there's more than one way to skin a cat. And so now I think parents look at gaming differently. Sponsors obviously look at gaming differently. Adults look at gaming differently. Kids look at gaming differently. And so what we're finding in our research that traditional athletes play games just as much as the gamers do, right? I mean, the Fortnites and the League of Legends, I mean, the whole nine. This is what they do when they get home from practice, have to do homework. They go play games with all their other friends on the team and have their different teams and names. And so it's really connected. And so there's not a separation of church and state anymore. I mean, this is the lifestyle of a young high school athlete, a young middle school athlete. This is what they do. And they do it often. And so I think moving forward, it should be easy for us to be able to pull in the data from the gaming and traditional sports and see if there's some type of correlation. I think that'll be the next study that we do, maybe not this summer, but probably next summer.
Yeah, and one of the things, you and I being both traditional sports athletes, I do see that as well. So I see a lot of the athletic kids are also gaming. My kids are 14, 11, and they're exactly what we're talking about. They play 3-4 sports.
Exactly.
But they game a ton. Where I see us and, you know, guys like us coming from, and when we talk about holistically speaking, diet, nutrition, and health and well-being and mental and rest and recovery and mental health and all those things and physical activity,
right?
I see gaming as an opportunity for guys like us who realize how important that is to now reach out to that community. So what I'm saying is a kid that maybe couldn't kick a kickball, you know what I mean? Couldn't throw a baseball or a football 10 yards.
Right.
Now, because of gaming and because we know and understand and realize how important physical activity is, I think there's an opportunity to talk to that segment of the population that doesn't have to be athletic per se.
Right.
But now because they're gamers and we have to have that conversation, listen, it's not good to sit down and game for 14 hours straight. Listen, you can game for a couple hours, but then you've got to get up and do something. So what do you feel about that? Because you're really working on the infrastructure side, right? The technology side. But when this is more of just a basic question to yourself coming as a professional athlete and looking at that space that way.
So that's a good question. So my thought has always been, in my personal life philosophy, is everything in moderation, right? Everything in moderation. And I think that esports so far has done a really good job of taking the 100+ years of traditional sports and kind of taking the best of it, right? And so they have a cheat sheet. And so when you talk about infrastructure, talk about foundation, there shouldn't be a huge learning curve. There's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of data out there that they can take and make esports what it can be and have it reach its full potential on the first go round, right? As opposed to a second or third go round with what traditional sports had to go through. And so we'll see if the gaming leadership and industry, take heed because it's growing so fast, right? People say the Wild Wild West. I wouldn't say quite the Wild Wild West because there's some infrastructure, right? And there's some framework already in place. But I think that if it's not careful, the train can jump the tracks and all the potential that has been teed up, that's been worked on, may be lost. But we have the people before the Todd Harris's of the world, folks who are pouring their effort and energy into the gaming industry in different ways, whether it be events, competitions, information. I think it'll be okay. I think that how do you stop a gamer, prevent a gamer from overtraining, right? Because that's kind of what we're talking about, right? A traditional athlete, you can't overtrain. You can't, work out every day for 6 hours a day. Your body's not going to let you do that, and you have to find that sweet spot. And I think that's where gaming is finding those sweet spots, those recommendations, those remedies, those recommendations that work. Hey, if you do this, if you do X, then you'll reach Y. Right. And that's what I think is happening. You have your top gamers, your most popular gamers, giving recommendations on the different streaming channels and things like that. I think that's helpful. Everybody can't be Ninja. Everybody can't, be on the World Championship, gaming teams. But if you can take a little bit of those recommendations of what they do well, how they do it, and incorporate into your game as a esports competitor, you'll be better for it. And I think that's because it's so young. It's going to take time for that to catch hold and it become a staple, right? So for traditional sports, it's always recommended to warm up before you compete, right? To stretch, to warm up, no matter what we do now, whether you go to the gym or whether you walk, you stretch, you do, because it's ingrained in us now. Yeah. And so those type things are going to happen in gaming too, whatever it is, hand exercises, things like that. You mentioned, massages, acupuncture, whatever those things are that gives you that peak performance. Those things are going to start becoming the norm for the industry, and the sooner the better, right? I think with gaming, it's a little different than traditional sports. Traditional sports, you don't recommend kids start lifting weights and then doing things like that, right? You got to wait until your body grows. Well, I think with gaming, kids can start earlier with those best practices. And so if they do that earlier, I suspect and would predict that by the time they're middle school, high school, that there'll be some of the top competitors in the country, if not the world.
Yeah, I'll give you one of those good examples. It's one that struck me, and I'd already been in the space for a couple of years when he told me, and I was kind of surprised. And by the way, you were talking earlier, and I agree 100%. I used to play basketball when I was growing up, right? And I would play 3 hours, pick up basketball, right? And you just do run after run after run. And if you win, you stay on. Right. And dude, like after 2.5, 3 hours, your legs start cramping up.
Numb.
You can't do it anymore. You just can't do it anymore. So yeah, you have to stop. But Dr. Dan Lewin is the eye doctor for the Florida Panthers, and he's gotten into esports and gaming. So he told me when I went around his facility, he said, "Listen, it's the 20-20-20 rule." And immediately I had that already always listening mind. I was like, I know what 2020, 2020 vision. But he's like, no, he said, when you game for 20 minutes, you stand up for 20 seconds and you look at something 20 feet away. And what that does is it recalibrates your eyes, because your eye is a muscle, just like your other muscles. And when you're gaming, your eyes are stressed for that entire time. They're flexing. And I was like, for guys like us, athletes like us that are going to the gym and lift, man, I couldn't do an hour straight of curls. You know what I mean? Like, right? You do it for a couple minutes and then you got to take a break and then you go back to it. I thought that was a great example. So I like to share that with people because it's one of those, it's easy to remember, 20-20-20.
No, I like that too. I'm gonna start sharing that as well. It's like because the space look at us as role models and whatnot, and I can talk about traditional sports all day, and gaming is something that I'm learning, right? And I think that in order to be a good entrepreneur and service to space, you have to be a curious soul. You have to be willing to learn and continue to learn, and that's what I like about my team. We have a hodgepodge of PhDs, Harvard MBAs, former NFL general managers, myself, former All-Pro. So, but we still can constantly and consistently learn something new and always share it, 2 o'clock in the hey, check out it's about traditional sports and esports too. And so, we're not, we're not snobs when it comes to gaming. I think that, it's going to gaming is here to stay. And I think the traditional sports professionals are finding ways, just like you, just like me now, to incorporate both knowledge bases to make the space a little bit better.
Yeah. I got a couple more for you before we tie up here. One, and I think this is going to be a quick one based on what you've already told me, but this is just like something I'm throwing out for fun. What, if there was one, do you know what your Madden rating was in the game?
No, I don't. I suspected it was probably pretty good before I left because my last few years, I led the league in interceptions. And
Come on, man. How many did you have? How many did you have in your career?
So total, I think about 36, 37.
What? How many did you bring back to the house?
Like 3.
Really?
Got a couple fumbles back to the house too.
Man,
yeah,
that's a great feeling.
Couple house calls. But I look at the game now, and I was like, man, you have a lot of good athletes, but they aren't such good football players, in my opinion, right? And they're strong, they're fast, they're quick, but they're not reading their keys. And it's like I can't look at a game like regular folks. I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm fussing and cussing at the screen. It's like, why did you do that? And I tell my friends all the time, I can't be a coach. Right? I can't. I don't have the patience to be a coach. I can probably coach little league or high school, and that's it. Right. Yeah, when I watch games now, it's like, oh my God, this is coming. And you read the play, before it happens, and everybody's like, how do you know that? How do you knew that was coming? What? You just look at you read the keys, assignment, alignment, and technique. Yeah. And so yeah, no. Yeah.
That's so funny, man, because sometimes I'll sit there and my wife will just roll her eyes because I'll be like, oh, you got to watch. And I rewind it and I'm like, and I'm pointing everything out on the screen to everybody. It's so crazy. But I don't know if you've coached the youth yet, but the one thing I can tell you is I have to do this. I believe that I'm a very good youth coach.
Right.
A lot of positive reinforcement. I love it. I love my kids. Right. But every once in a while I'll be coaching and I'll be going nuts on the kids and they're like 8 or 9 years old. Right. And I'm expecting this stuff of them, like, at a high level. And then I'll turn around and I'll go to the bench and I'll sit them down and be like, listen, guys, I apologize because I see it like here and you guys are 8 and 9 years old. Like you really shouldn't be able to do the things that I'm expecting. But at least I understand that.
So for me, it's a little different. So, I typically coach at camps. Okay. Right. And so when we building Camp ID, you have to have some firsthand experience, right? You can't build a product in an ivory tower somewhere. And so we literally, throughout the country, would go and coach camps. People we know, different camps, from the Pro Football Hall of Fame camp to camps here in Atlanta, some of the athletes and volunteer camps. It just didn't matter. We wanted to get our hands dirty and get some learnings that we can bring back to the table. And so for me, it was a matter of, how can I coach this technique the simplest way, right? As opposed to 5 steps, can you explain it in 3, right? And how can we get them to do it on a consistent basis? How can we make them have fun and remember, right? That was kind of my main focus. Like, hey, we're gonna work on 1 or 2 things today. If it was a week-long camp, every day we worked on 1 or 2 things. These are things we're gonna work on. And by the end of that week, you layer those foundational learnings and teachings on top of it. Man, they were communicating with one another. Hey, you gotta move over there. Give me some more of that. Hey, and I was a happy camper. I was in heaven, right? Yeah. Because the process worked, and so that's kind of how we would do it. That's how I did it, and I think it was the biggest benefit because you have parents coming over. It's like, Joey had such a great time, and he was his favorite coach. And this and that. And it makes you feel good. It makes you feel that, the things that you're working on, the things you do, the things you're doing is helping make this sports space a better place.
Making a difference. Couple things left. One of them that I know you've been a part of, at least I believe, is the Smart Play Initiative.
Right.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Which one? That's the one with the
I think that's NFLPA. I think
NFL.
I think that was part of the Super Bowl, or I'm not sure exactly, but I remember us talking about it briefly.
So the NFL has a lot of initiatives, and the Smart Play, I think they tied that into USA Football, and tied into the rules and regulations of the game, and also to the safety of the game, and making it, I wouldn't say necessarily fun, but allowing kids to learn more about the play. And I think that was mainly around the rules and regulations. And so when the Super Bowl was here in Atlanta, there's a bunch of different initiatives, right? You know, you taking over city, and there's I think hundreds of events. One of the events that we would do, and we were part of, was the Smart Play initiative at the different schools, elementary schools around the city, and the high schools, talking about the who, what, when, where, and why. Kind of the history of the game too. I think that gets lost a lot of times because kids just want to play. But I thought we did a good job, you know, from an NFL standpoint, FLPA standpoint, of sharing some of the history. And one of the things we did to tie into technology, I was part of the Super Bowl host committee on the technology committee, was we did a brunch, a technology brunch. We called it Tech Jocks. You know, we'll do it again in Tampa this year. So Tech Jocks was an idea that I had, a concept I had, where I brought professional athletes from all sports, obviously in Super Bowl, mainly a lot of the NFL guys, some technologists, some founders, and some investors together, and had a nice brunch. We had some panel discussions and a fireside chat. We talked about athletes as investors. We talked about athletes as founders, and what's next coming up in the sports industry. And then we ended it off with a fireside chat with Marcus Colston and Dave Meltzer. And it was a big hit. We had about 250 RSVPs, probably 92 people came through the door. And so it was the event that we partnered up with TPI partners. And it was a really good event.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see doing something together with you guys that on that in Tampa, because that just, with technology and gaming and esports, I just think it's a natural fit. So maybe there is like a little breakout session on that as well. I think that'd be super cool.
No doubt. No doubt.
And then the last thing, you know, and again, this comes from, and I think it was actually a podcast that you were on with Dave Meltzer, and you guys were talking about sports and serious fun. I think that was, like you kind of said, serious fun. And when I heard you say that, I thought about sports and gaming. Like for me, I've wanted to place myself, because you talked about what turns you on as far as when you leave, you know, your sporting career and you're looking at business. Well, I've always wanted to do something I would enjoy. So I'd be one of those guys that would wake up. First of all, I wouldn't even want to go to bed, right? A lot of times I don't even want to go to sleep, right? But then as soon as I wake up, I'm like excited. And I'm
right back over again.
You just don't stop, because, and I thought that was a great way to coin that term, serious fun, because every day I think I wake up and I'm like, I'm having so much fun, but it's serious stuff we're talking about. And and in reality, some of it is like world changing. You know, I really believe in some of these things that we're doing as being game changing and world changing, especially in today's day, you know, what's going on in today. So having said that, that was kind of your term that I loved. Would you say that you're really having serious fun right now? And what's the last thing that you'd like to end off with that maybe you guys are doing in the next 3-6 months, a year, that's super, super cool?
So yeah, no, I would definitely say it's serious fun. And it's, you know, we mentioned it earlier that it's unpredictable, right? You can't predict it. Being an entrepreneur, being a founder, in the technology space, things change quite a bit. In the sports space, we realized that things are changing quite a bit too. Sports was the one industry that I argued that was recession proof. If not recession proof, then I argued it was recession resistant. COVID-19 proved otherwise. It brought many industries down to its knees, and it paused the sports ecosystem, the whole entire ecosystem. That's never, ever happened. And so, Tommy, what that did for us is we planned on launching 2 products, Sports ID and Camp ID, this summer to a great fanfare, had a great marketing plan, launch plan, all that good stuff. And so it made us kind of take a pause and reevaluate. And while other organizations was slowing down, shutting down, we said that, hey, we're going to double down or triple down. So instead of just those 2 products, we said, no, we're going to launch at least about 11 plus products this summer. So we got a big development team, big research team, and you're going to see probably, a dozen or more products coming out of our camp between now and the summer, now and the beginning of the fall. Because even if you do everything perfectly, even if you follow your marketing plan, your sales plan, your launch plan to a T, there are things out there that can throw a curveball at you that you didn't plan for. We didn't plan for a COVID-19, right? And our launch plan is like, hey, we're going to do this, but if this happens, no. Right. And so what does that mean at the end of the day? It means that you got to enjoy life every day. You don't know what's going to happen, and life is too short. Although I don't know any direct friends or family members that passed away from COVID-19, it's hit close enough, right? We seeing what's going on in our society with race relations, and it's important that you get up and be able to work on things that you believe in, work on things that you think is going to help make the world a better place. And I'm hanging my hat, I'm putting my eggs in the sports basket, right? Whether it's traditional sports and esports, this is where I'm putting my effort and energy into. I found my calling, right? And I'm able to marry my 2 passions, technology and sports. And this is probably where I'll be for the next 20 years. And so to answer your question, it's not easy. It's not, predictable. But I wouldn't want to be anyplace else right now. I wouldn't want to be anyplace else for the next 20 years.
Yeah, man. I agree with you, man. Well, I've been wanting to do this for a while, so I really appreciate it. It's been great to catch up, and I think there's a lot on the table that we can do together before the Super Bowl even. And then I'll reach out to you offline about that stuff. Obviously,
that sounds good.
Yeah. All right, Ryan. Thanks, man.
You're welcome.
All right.
Talk to you soon.
Ciao.
I'd like to thank Ryan for sharing his time, experience, and knowledge with us today. His collegiate football stories at UM, though just scratching the surface, were awesome. What I really took away from our conversation was how the lessons he learned at UM and in the NFL translate so well to business. Planning, tendencies, perfect practice, discipline, timing, playbooks for success, these are all characteristics he has taken from the gridiron into the technology sector to solve small problems across big industries, sports and esports. You can listen to Ryan again now, and you can also find timestamped segments of the show, links to his social pages, and more information about his company, projects, and media in the show notes. If you enjoyed our discussion, please let us know. Continue the conversation with me across all social platforms and become a part of the Ultimate Gamer community today by subscribing at ultimategamer.com. We release a new show every day of the week, Monday through Friday, so be the first to join us for some outstanding upcoming guests and or dive back into the library of previous All About the Game pods to hear from some of the most brilliant minds in the space. Experts like co-owner and VP of Talent at Aftershock Media, Amanda Solomon, head of esports at Full Sail University, Bennett Newsom, and writer-journalist for the Esports Insider and Benzinga, Crystal Mills, just to name a few. You can find all of these episodes and more on the Ultimate Gamer website, on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your pods. And finally, please like, rate, and review the show. It helps us reach the gaming community to spread the word and share the wisdom of our guests, as well as some of the most thought-provoking stories in the industry. Shout out, as always, to the Ultimate Gamer. I look forward to being with you on the next All About the Game podcast.